ash in the breath, soil in the bone, tales wake and stir within the dark unknown. Step into the hush where the dark seeds roam, the stories rise whispering, the echoes from the lone.
Welcome back, wayward souls, to the place where the earth remembers what people try to bury, where the wind carries stories older than scripture, and where the dark is not an absence, but a presence. Before we step into the tale, I ask you as always to light your lanterns, steady your breath, and let the world beyond your walls fall away until only the hush of the unseen remains. And remember, if you feel moved by the dark, remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a review. It helps to keep the lanterns burning and guide people back to the loam. Now settle in, lanterns burning, and follow me into the story of the Sluagh, the host of the unforgiven dead, who fly from the west on a wind that doesn't touch the grass, seeking the souls of the dying and the unwary. The year was 1887, though the island paid little attention to such things, for time moved differently in the Outer Hebrides, where the sea carved its own calendar into the cliffs. And on the Isle of Harris, where the land rose and fell like the ribs of some ancient creature, there stood a croft house, so weather-beaten it seemed less built than grown from the stone itself. It belonged to a woman named Mary MacLeod, a widow of 10 years. Though the grief had settled into her bones so thoroughly, she carried it like a second spine, moving through her days with a quiet endurance of someone who had learned that sorrow was not a storm, but a climate. She lived alone, save for the old dog that slept by the hearth and the memories that clung to the corners of the house. Mari was not afraid of the dark. She had lived too long on an island where the night came early and stayed late, where the wind howled like a living thing, and where the sea swallowed men without apology. But she feared the west. Everyone did. For the west was the direction of the dead, the place where the sun sank into the sea like a drowning soul, the place where the Sluagh flew. Wicked spirits who had been denied heaven, denied peace, denied the quiet of a grave, and who now travelled on the wind like a storm of shadows, seeking the souls of the dying. The old people said that the Sluagh came like a flock of blackbirds, though no bird ever moved with such hunger. And they said the Sluagh could slip through the smallest crack, but only if the window faced west. So every house on the island kept its western windows barred, shuttered or bricked over entirely, for no one wished to be the one who let the host inside. And Mari's house was no exception. The western window had been sealed long before she was born, its frame filled with stone and mortar, but its outline still visible like a scar. She'd never questioned it, for some traditions are not meant to be challenged, only obeyed. But the year her story begins, the island had been battered by storms so fierce they tore roofs from houses and boats from moorings. And one night, as the wind screamed like a banshee, the sea hurled itself against the cliffs with the fury of a god denied. The western wall of Mari's house cracked. She didn't notice at first. The crack was as thin as a hair and ran from ceiling to floor. She told herself it was nothing, just the house settling, just the storm testing the stones. But the dog noticed. He lifted his head from the hearth, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the western wall. His body trembling with a fear so deep, it seemed to come from some instinct older than domestication. And when Mari called his name, he didn't look away, didn't blink, didn't move. as though the crack was holding him in the spell. And that night the wind changed. It was no longer howling but whispering. And Mari felt the hairs on her arms rise, though the fire burned hot and bright. She told herself it was only the storm, only her imagination. But she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the whispering, to the faint scrape of something against the wall, to the soft, rhythmic tapping that sounded almost like fingers. And when dawn finally came, pale and exhausted, she rose, with a heavy certainty that something had definitely shifted. And over the next few days, the whispering grew louder. It came at dusk, when the sun bled into the sea and the sky turned the colour of bruises, and the wind carried the scent of salt and something older, something like the breath of a long dead thing. And Mari found herself avoiding the western side of the house. The dog refused to go near the wall, growling at it, low and constant, with his body rigid. Mari felt a coldness settle into her bones, the kind of coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she heard a sound that froze her blood. The beating of wings. Countless wings moving in a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. She knew, deep down, that the Sluagh were near. She stood in the centre of the room, lantern trembling in her hand as the whispering rose to a fevered pitch, as the crack in the wall widened with a sickening sound, and the air grew cold enough to burn. She felt the presence of the host against the outside of the house, testing it, seeking a way inside. The Sluagh had come for her. Not because she was dying or because she was wicked, but because the crack had given them a way in, and the Sluagh do not waste opportunities. The wall split open, not violently or explosively, but slowly and deliberately, like a mouth opening to speak. And through that widening gap, she saw them. A twisting mass of shadowed forms, skeletal and bird-like, wings tattered, bodies contorted. They moved with a fluid, unnatural grace, and they poured into the room like smoke. They circled her, their movements slow and deliberate, as though savouring the moment. And she felt their cold breath on her skin, their hunger pressing against her soul, their whispering filling her mind with fragments of voices that had once been human, but were now nothing more than echoes of regret. She didn't scream, she didn't run, she just stood there, lantern flickering in hand, as though the Sluagh closed in around her, the wings brushing against her like a touch of frost. For the Sluagh did not only take the dying, they took whatever they could. And the lantern fell from her hand. The flame died and the darkness rushed in, and the Sluagh swallowed her whole. And when the villagers found the house days later, they found it empty. No sign of struggle, no sign of Mari, no sign of the dog. The western wall was open. The stones scattered across the floor, and the air inside the house was cold enough to frost the breath of anyone who stepped inside. And when they looked toward the western sky, they saw a dark shape drifting on the wind, moving with the slow, inevitable hunger of the host. And they closed their windows, every last one. For the Sluagh had taken her. And the Sluagh do not stop at one. Wind over Harris never truly rests. It moves like a living thing, restless and remembering, carrying the salt of the sea and the dust of the dead, whispering through the heather with a voice that sounds almost human when the night is long enough. The crofts stand empty now, their roofs sagging, their windows blind, their doors swollen with damp. And the paths that once led to them are half claimed by moss and half forgotten by memory. Yet the wind still finds its way through the cracks, through the broken glass, through the hollow spaces where prayers used to live. They say the Sluagh passed here once, not in the way of a storm, but in the way of a shadow that learns to mimic the shape of light. In the years that followed Mari MacLeod's death, the island changed, in small, imperceptible ways. The seagulls grew quieter, the sheep refused to graze near the cliffs, the fishermen began to leave offerings on the shore, bits of bread, drops of whiskey, sprigs of rowan. Not because they believed, but because belief had become safer than doubt. The church bell rusted in its tower, its clapper frozen, its sound replaced by the low moan of the wind that circled the island each dusk. And sometimes, when the tide was low and the light was strange, people claimed to see figures moving along the horizon, thin, crooked silhouettes that drifted rather than walked, their shapes dissolving into the mist as soon as they were noticed. No one spoke of them openly, because no one dared. The stories changed with the seasons. Some said the Sluagh had taken Mari's soul and carried it with them. Others said she had joined them willingly, her voice now part of the wind that haunted the island's edges. But the oldest among them, the ones who still remember the Gaelic prayers, the ones who still left milk for the dead, said something different. They said the Sluagh had not taken her. They said she had bound them with her final breath, bound them with her grief, bound them with the memory of every soul they had ever stolen before her. And that was why the wind never stopped. Because it was not wind at all. On certain nights when the moon hangs low and red over the sea, the air grew heavy, with a scent of peat smoke and salt, and the sound of wings can be heard. But not the wings of birds, the dry, brittle flutter of something far older, something that had forgotten how to fly but still remembered the motion. The sound would circle the island once, twice, 3 times, and then fade into the distance, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt the world had stopped breathing. Those who heard of it never spoke of it. Those who didn't never believed it. But the wind kept moving. It carried whispers across the moor, fragments of words, no language, syllables that tasted of ash and seawater. And sometimes, if you listen long enough, a name. Mari. Soft, almost tender. The name would drift through the heather and vanish into the cliffs and return again days later. Changed, hollowed out as though repeated by something that didn't understand what it was saying, but couldn't stop saying it. The Sluagh were not gone, they were never gone, but they were quieter now. Bound to the wind, bound to the island, bound to the memory of the woman who had faced them and refused to look away. And in that binding, something had shifted. Not mercy and not peace, but a kind of balance, fragile and uneasy. The way a candle flame balances between light and smoke. The island learned to live with its ghosts. The dead learned to live with their hunger. And the wind learned to carry both. Years passed, decades. The crofts fell, the graves sank, and the sea took what it wanted, but the wind remained. And if you stand on the cliffs of Harris at dusk and the light turns the sea to iron and the horizon to fire, you might feel it. That faint pressure at your back. That cold breath against your ear, that whisper that sounds almost like laughter. But it's not laughter. It's not grief. It's the sound of the bound, remembering what it means to be free. And somewhere far beyond the reach of the living, the Sluagh turn in the dark, their hollow eyes reflecting the last light of the dying sun. Mari MacLeod, the one who bound the wind, the one who taught the dead to listen, the one who made it live forever. Mari's story serves to remind us that if the wind sounds different, if it carries a whisper that does not belong to the living, if the shadows seem to move with a rhythm not their own, perhaps it's only a story lingering in your mind. Or perhaps it's the Sluagh, and they've taken an interest in you. Though I'm sure you'll sleep just fine, wayward souls. If you enjoyed tonight's tale, as much as one can enjoy these things, remember to like and share. It helps keep the lanterns burning here in the loam. So until next time, keep your wits about you. Shutter your windows, and above all else, light your lanterns. Blessings upon you.